If you know your alphabet.
I'd like to take his face off.
Welcome to Enter the Cage, where we review the films of our greatest national treasure, Hollywood's most interesting man, Nicolas Cage. I'm Tyler Flynn, and as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, Nate Treese.
Hello.
And Bonnie Jordan.
Hey there.
This week, we're joined by another good friend of mine, Dave.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So, as we do with new guest hosts, we always like to ask, Dave, what is your first Nick Cage experience?
Okay. When I was originally asked this question, it was a lot harder than I thought it would be. I knew Nick Cage by reputation for years, but actually thinking of my first movie with him, I think it had to have been Face Off when I was either 13 or 14 years old.
Yeah.
Good one.
That's a great 13-year-old movie.
Yeah. Well, it was like, I do remember it was either like I don't know, it was a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon, just watching TV. And then, my mom was like cooking and she said like, and HBO says coming up next, Face Off. And she's like, oh, start watching that now. And then we watched the movie together. And then
your mom's a lot cooler than my mom.
Yeah, and it was on HBO too, so you got like all
it was uncensored.
Oh yeah, no. We watched the movie, and I just remember thinking, "Oh, this is an awesome movie," but at the same time, I'm thinking this is really weird. Like what? Like I don't know. I just couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew like there was something wrong with the guy who was opposite John Travolta, because I had no idea what Nick Cage's name was at the time either. And then I guess the next year, National Treasure would come out, or so maybe I was like around that time. And then, of course, all those years later, when you see those YouTube videos of like Nick Cage loses his shit, and then like the fact that there's like countless videos just reacting to him acting, it's insane.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was my first experience, and I will never forget him in a priest uniform, just wide-eyed, dancing to
hamming it up.
Oh yeah,
it was.
I cannot wait to talk about that movie.
There's so many levels to that movie. It's going to be great.
Oh boy,
looking forward to it.
All right, let's get through this one.
Uh-oh, someone's showing their opinions prematurely, I think. Wait for the segment, Nate.
I just mean everything is just like a placeholder until we get to Face Off.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay. that is the gold standard?
I think so. I mean, I don't want to spoil my opinion of that movie any more than I already have, but yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing, Dave. And now we move on to our next segment that we like to call
Big Bad Face Off.
Fake Fact Face Off is our elaborate way of playing two truths and a lie. One of us comes up with 3 Nick Cage facts, one of them being false, and the other members of our group have to determine which one of those 3 is false. And this week, it is my turn, so I will just jump right in. These are my 3 facts. Number 1. Nicolas Cage once woke up to a naked man sitting in his bed eating a fudgesicle. Number 2. Nicolas Cage has a vial filled with cobra venom that he keeps for increasing his sexual potency. And number 3. Nicolas Cage once got high on mushrooms with his cat. Which one of those is fake, gang?
I'm almost positive that the last one is true.
Yeah, that one has to be true.
It's definitely true. I want to say number 1 is false.
Yeah.
I'm gonna agree with you, Dave. I think it is number 1.
Because number 2 is so out there, it has to be true.
Well, number 2 just reminds me of like all of the talk that he did when he was making the Ghost Rider sequel about like keeping voodoo charms on him to get into the spirit of like. Okay, I don't have a hard time believing he would keep cobra venom, or that he would believe that it would increase his sexual potency. Yeah, I'm gonna say. Although I don't know if you guys are both gonna say number 1, I feel like I should say number 2 just to cover the bases.
Yeah, peer pressure.
No, I'm gonna say
do whatever
Tyler,
you want.
I'm gonna say number 2 just because I feel like it's number 1, and you can't do that with Nick Cage. You gotta go against. You gotta You got to get rid of all logic and reason when you're
You
trying
guys
to
did get it wrong last week.
That is true. All right, so final answer, we have Bonnie and Dave going for number 1 and Nate for number 2. The official fake fact of the 3 is number 2.
Ha!
Wow.
I made that one up all on my own, and apparently
Seriously?
it was very convincing.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Job,
So
Nate.
what's the story behind number 1?
No, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I think
It's like a tall tale. Knowing the origin of it makes it less special.
Oh my god.
No, he was in his house one time, and some strung out guy managed to sneak his way in, and he was just sitting there eating a fudgesicle, and Nick Cage just escorted him out of his house. He didn't call the cops or anything. He talked about it in an interview one time, and then his cat one time got into I think it was his fridge where he was keeping mushrooms, and the cat ate a bunch of the mushrooms. So he decided, well, what the hell? I might as well do them with my cat. So he ate them, and they were both tripping together.
that's actually very sweet.
It's adorable.
You don't let one cat get high on its own.
Owner and pet bond there.
Did that cat die? I want to know though. I feel like that cat's heart probably gave out because it saw a bunch of like really fucked up shit.
Hopefully it died happy. Or maybe
Well.
confused. We'll never know.
Terrified.
All right, that was a great segment. We're going to move on to a little new portion. For our new segment, I'm going to be talking about last week's movie a little bit. If you listened last time, we reviewed Rumblefish, and as I promised, I actually got a chance to read the book. So I wanted to talk about a few of the little details that were left out of the movie and that I found interesting. So, a couple interesting facts from the book. The entire book actually takes place in flashback. It's set 5 years after the motorcycle boy's death, and Rusty James and his friend Steve, the nerdy kid, end up randomly meeting in California, and Rusty James had been in prison most of that time, and Steve was going to college to become a teacher. So they just happened to meet up and start reminiscing about the past. The characters are actually all supposed to be in junior high, not high school, and Rusty James is supposed to be 14, so that shows you how miscast Matt Dillon was, or how much older he looks than the part he's supposed to be playing. And apparently Lawrence Fishburne is also in their grades, so imagine Lawrence Fishburne with a full-grown mustache being 14 somehow.
I don't have to imagine. That's probably exactly how he looks.
The part in the fight right after Biff Wilcox slashes Rusty James's stomach, and then the motorcycle boy uses his motorcycle to take him out. In the book, motorcycle boy just goes up and snaps Biff's wrist with his bare hands. So it was a bit more brutal.
That's actually more what I would expect Mickey Rourke to do in a fight than what he did in the movie.
Just Mickey Rourke, not even his character.
Well, it was difficult for me to not. Usually, when I see Mickey Rourke in a movie, I just think of him as Mickey Rourke, and then I have to like remind myself that he's playing a character, and if that character has a name that's not Mickey Rourke.
Of course.
Rusty James is even more stupid in the books than he was in the movie. He has some kind of either learning disability or brain damage. I think it's more the latter from all the fights he gets in. But he, like every other sentence he talks about, I don't remember things too good. And he has trouble counting a lot. So he's kind of like a violent Forrest Gump. He's just not very likable, and as we saw in the movie. So that's emphasized even more. And then just in general, I thought the book kind of portrayed the idea of like brotherly adoration and the hopelessness of Rusty James's situation a bit better, but overall it's still very kind of esoteric, floaty feeling to it. So it doesn't really add that much compared to what we saw. I just thought I'd share and give you some interesting behind-the-scenes stuff.
All right.
Hope you liked it.
Thank you.
Very
Yay.
informative.
Woohoo!
Insightful. Genius.
Excelsior.
Sarcasm. Okay, moving on to our movie section. This week we have a tale of 1940s friendship, first love, and back alley abortions. we watched Racing with the Moon.
It was 1943, and young men were counting the days until they would go off to war.
When do you leave?
Next month.
I just hate to see you spend the last few weeks of your manhood chasing something you can't catch.
In the last few weeks, being around you, I think about things.
Like what sort of things?
Coming back.
Race with me! Race with me, Hop!
Racing with the Moon.
Racing with the Moon is about two childhood friends, Henry and Nikki, who are both from kind of blue-collar backgrounds living in a small town in the 1940s during World War II. They're both about to be shipped off overseas, and both of them have somewhat complicated love lives, and the story is more about Henry's love life, but it's about how they deal with the situation and their impending departure. So I guess we'll just jump right in. What were everyone's thoughts about the movie overall?
I just want to say, I really liked this movie.
I did too.
I might even say I loved it.
I thought it was really good. The best one we've watched so far.
It was incredibly well acted, and I thought it had a really good, it was like emotional and dramatic in parts without being too like maudlin or sentimental. All of the like actors were really good in it, and it had a really strong script, which I want to talk about later. But and since this is a Nick Cage podcast, a really good performance by Nicolas Cage as well.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree. I was extremely pleasantly surprised with this. Was not expecting this at all.
Well, none of us know what we're getting into, really.
Well,
so
yeah,
it's always nice.
Especially with these early ones where they've kind of like fallen off of people's radar. Like I had heard of Rumblefish before this and, Valley Girl and all that kind of thing, but I had absolutely no idea that this movie existed until it showed up on our schedule of episodes to do. So and usually when you've like never heard of a movie before and never like heard any of the actors who are in it reference it
and can barely find it anywhere to watch,
that's usually not a good sign. But in this case, yeah. But in this case, I was very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I thought it was a good movie. I don't know I wasn't entirely surprised that it was like so difficult to find. Like I feel like it's the kind of movie where you watch it and you're like, that was really enjoyable, but I'm never going to think to go back to this movie.
Yeah. I liked it, but I will never watch this movie again. Probably. Like there's a high probability I won't.
Like it didn't stick with me, but it was thoroughly enjoyable in the moment.
The coming of age genre is not one that benefits, in my opinion, from repeated viewings.
Well, it has to be a very, very good movie to do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's true.
All right. So when I was watching this movie, I'm not sure if you guys ever saw this one, but I kind of got the vibe, or I was reminded of a movie from the 80s called Mischief that starred Kelly Preston. And like I just looked it up about 10 minutes before we called. And this movie, it was like, it was more teen comedy, but it's period piece too. Instead of the 40s, it's the 50s. But I don't know, for some reason, it had like the same vibe to me of the guy who likes a girl, but really can't, like they're from two different worlds, it seems. And then they end up together anyway. And it was just, while that one wasn't very great, this one was like done well. Kind of the same thing of two friends, their relationships, and while one relationship is not that great, the other one is very sweet and actually has a good dynamic to it. So I remember I saw Mischief maybe like senior year of high school, and the only reason I remembered it was because Kelly Preston was like showed her boobs in it, so that was why. But when I'm seeing this movie for Racing with the Moon, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, like there's not many similarities with the plot, but just like the type of dynamics and relationships that they showed, there were similarities.
Okay.
And there are boobs in this one too.
That is true.
They're more tastefully done in this movie, though.
Oh yeah,
not as good as Fast Times. That's still like the gold standard. But
well,
so I guess
one thing
Oh, go ahead, Bonnie.
One thing I think they did really well with this movie is the way that they portrayed the boys' angst over having been drafted.
Yeah.
Like I think that this movie is a very good movie, and it is because of the way that they portrayed that, like having to handle that as a 17-year-old kid. You know, they showed that really well.
I think it was like
I was gonna comment on that.
It was like an overarching or like something hanging over their shoulder, but it didn't really come into play until he went to the veterans hospital.
Mm-hmm.
But and that like really drove it home. I thought that was a great scene.
Why the hell is Mr. Blonde in this movie for all of
Michael Madsen.
3 minutes?
There are some great like just tiny roles and cameos in this, like Crispin Glover at the beginning. Carol Kane plays Annie, the hooker.
Okay, so she was a hooker? I was right thinking that, right? Okay.
Dave, I don't want to. I didn't want to be the one to tell you this if you hadn't picked it up, but I don't think she was actually going to go pay her electric bill.
No, yeah, but like I felt like, all right, so is she a hooker? Wasn't totally sure.
Yeah, well, that was nice because it's like
it wasn't explicit.
It wasn't explicit, and it was like like when Nikki and Hopper like see that guy trying to cheat her, they actually like come to her side. They're like, hey, come on, man. Don't be a deadbeat about this. And I thought that was kind of nice.
Yeah.
Probably not reflective of the time period, but whatever.
The other great element of this movie was the romance between Hopper and Caddy. I thought that was what I wanted in Valley Girl. Like they have a relationship. They actually develop and get to know one another and go on dates, and we actually see them talking to one another. Like there's something substantial there.
What's your name?
I don't go out with strangers.
Who said anything about going out? Besides, if you told me your name, we wouldn't be strangers.
I don't think so.
Hey, how'd you like the flowers?
Oh, so you're the one.
Well, I think it has to be said that even though this movie has a really strong script by the great Stephen Kloves, who had done The Fabulous Baker Boys, Wonder Boys, all of the Harry Potter movies that aren't the shitty one, and the first, part of the first Amazing Spider-Man script. I think, I think the real strength, and honestly, going back to that, I think like the dialogue with like the young characters that works in the Amazing Spider-Man is probably thanks to Stephen Kloves. But like for all of that, I think what really makes this movie stand out is the performances of like the young actors who are in it. Because Elizabeth McGovern, who is amazing, by the way, like she has gone on to do like some really fantastic things, and she had been nominated for an Academy Award already by that point too.
This is the first time I've ever seen her. I've never seen this actress before, but I really liked her. She had a great role.
You aren't a middle-aged white woman, so it doesn't like surprise me that you haven't heard of her, but she's like on Downton Abbey right now.
I looked at her IMDb. That was the only credit I knew.
Well, she was in a lot of really good films though, like Handmaid's Tale and Ragtime and what's the Henry James novel that she did the adaptation of? She's been in a lot of good stuff, and and she really, she really did like a great job in this one because she was a really nice, relatable character, and you really like want to pay. And I read that she and Sean Penn were briefly engaged after they were in this movie together, and so there is definitely some like great chemistry between them.
Yeah, it adds more substance or substantiates the relationship even more. I guess let's just start going through what were everyone's thoughts and opinions. What did you pick up on?
Well, something I wanted to mention that I have written down here is the dad is a really good character in this.
Besides the fact that he forgets his son's name in the very first scene.
Well, I think
Dad, Artie's the dog.
I think that was a joke, though.
Oh yeah, like the dad was my favorite character of this movie.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think Tyler, that he was just making a joke. Like I think
You know what? My
of...
parents have totally done that.
They've
totally
done that with my
called
siblings,
my
but not the
younger
pets.
brother the dog's name.
Okay.
It happens.
All right.
No, I just figured like he has such
age.
a like they showed he had such a good relationship with his dad, and like the fact that he could talk to his dad about just about anything. His dad was probably just screwing with him, and like I mean I love the scene where they're digging the grave, and then just by the fact that he's looking off, he could tell that he's thinking about a girl. Like I mean, just really good father-son moments in that movie.
And that the father doesn't force him to share his feelings. Like, he gives him his space. If he doesn't want to talk, just go do your own thing, son. I understand. Like, very supportive.
Yeah. And tellingly, the only time when you see him kind of like lose his temper and get mad at his son is when like he skips out on or when he's late for the like birthday dinner that like the whole family had worked hard to plan for him. And, and every other time he's just like, please, let your mom know if you're going to be out that late. And, like, hey, we'll talk about it. You've made up your mind. So we'll talk about it when you want to talk about it and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, you just get the feeling that he's such a good dad that like, even when he's not in the movie, you kind of feel like his presence, like in the scene where they're talking about like the lake, the pond and stuff, when he takes, Henry takes Caddy to the pond, and they talk about like the games he's played with dad. And then there's a whole layer of like him kind of being a surrogate father to Nikki too.
Yeah. When you learn his backstory, it tied the dad even more and the two of them together.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that the mom had been a little bit less of a non-entity, except just somebody who worried all the time
and wanted him to play piano.
Yeah, but I just thought the dad was a great character, and not something that you see a whole lot in like kind of coming of age dramas,
especially period pieces too.
Mm-hmm.
Like normally the dad in that time is always a hard ass.
Yeah.
I
love going back to the piano. I love in that opening scene where Hopper is practicing with his teacher and the teacher's correcting him, and then he just goes off on that like ragtime bit, and the teacher like gets so offended, like, how dare you play jazz music at this classical recording. He just storms out and like, leaves, so too. Pissed. Most unorthodox.
Well, I get the feeling that
probably happened a couple times.
Had happened like a bunch of times before, and he probably like used to like complain to the mom or like try to stop him, and at this point he's just like, fuck it, you're not gonna like, we're done for the day.
I mean, at least he's playing. It's just like,
well,
that's music you kids use today. Just
that actually is kind of a cool thing though, is that they kind of have almost like a little arc for him as the piano player too, because like he talks about how he kind of like resents it and stuff, but then later on it really helps him kind of bond with Caddy when they're playing in like his little clubhouse.
They're playing Heart and Soul from Big.
Well, Heart and Soul from like everyone who's even a little bit about how to play a piano.
I just think Tom Hanks when I hear that song. So
there were a couple things I noticed that it really has nothing to do with the plot. I like that. I just chuckled at the fact that when he goes to the movie theater, adult tickets are 35 cents and children were 15. Like, I don't know why. I'm just like, oh, I was totally born in... No, I was born in the right time, because movies now are great, but they're just so expensive.
And Dave, you and I probably wouldn't get in that movie theater. So.
Oh, that's true. No, it was California, so...
Well, yeah, they're a bit more liberal. But...
at least being a tattoo artist is, something that...
that was...
high career aspirations.
And then something I thought was... what's his name? Nicky. There's just one scene where he has like this horrible, horrible black eye. And then, he says, yeah, my dad and everything like that. And that's all he needs to say. But then the next time you see him, it seems like it's the very next day. It could be a week later, but I'm not sure. But his black eye is almost completely gone. And if it is the next day, I was thinking that is impossible. Like, what is Nicky doing? I don't know why, like, the makeup artist didn't pick up on that. But for some reason, that just stuck with me. I don't know why, of all things, that did, but I just thought that was funny.
Well, I think he probably just went home and got a raw steak and put it directly over his eye.
As you do.
And as one does when one has a black eye, and I feel like it was fine the next day.
Speaking of things out of time, I thought it was interesting, the whole bowling alley set. Like, you don't think about people actually had to physically put the pins in a machine back in the day. Like, it wasn't automated. You actually had to roll the ball back to people.
Yeah, that wasn't. Did they show bowling pins being put back in place in There Will Be Blood? Because that must have been around the same time, right? Or maybe
I
maybe
haven't
a
seen
decade or
that
so
one.
earlier.
Well, There Will Be Blood was like that ending probably took place in like the 20s or 30s, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, he probably had a servant do all of that for him.
Daniel Plainview doesn't set pins.
Yeah, he probably just rang his little bell and was like, I want you to come down here and put these pins back where they're supposed to be.
That was really good.
Also, I noticed, I don't know if anyone else picked up on this, but the part when Nikki and Hopper are talking to each other in the bowling alley after their shift is over, and Nikki's trying to convince Hopper to get a date so they can go on the double date, and the line is, he says, I don't care who you take whoever, take Alberta, and then it just cuts, and the next scene is them, and they're outside filling up the gin bottles. Like, there's no transition that a dialogue bit doesn't carry over. It's just a random cut.
Look, it doesn't even have to be a real date. Just show up at our house and con the old man.
Boys, I need more gin.
Take Alberta. I know what it is. You're out for Sally Kaiser.
I think what you were supposed to focus on was, because they didn't want to lose the bit where he says, "Boys, I need some more gin."
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it maybe as far as like when they were going through like the dailies or something, they were just like, it's more important that we preserve this joke about like the gin being mostly water than that like the dialogue have continuity.
Did anyone else notice that right before that happened, that Nick Cage copped a feel on Crispin Glover's girlfriend?
Oh my god! And she didn't react at all.
Not until he was far gone.
That was so weird.
She had no idea how that stain got on her breast.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, Crispin Glover is not exactly like pretty much the entire A plot of Back to the Future would be built around the fact that Crispin Glover is not like an imposing or like confrontational guy. So probably like in this movie, she's like realizing like, oh, like
I'm with this guy.
This guy's the worst. Like, like thank goodness Nick Cage came up and rescued me from
and touched my boob.
That. Yeah, thankfully that happened.
But he doesn't wear protection, so it's another problem.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about the abortion?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay, guys, we've watched 5 movies.
And 2 of them have abortions.
2 of them have
Seriously?
abortions.
Well, you know what?
And it's just a recurring theme in the 80s.
Well, here's the thing, is that the 80s was the first full decade in which abortion was legal and safe, you know, so it's possible, you know, that it just was something that writers felt more comfortable like exploring and, you know, talking about, either, you know, it now being an option for you to go to a low risk like abortion, or the fact that it hadn't been an option before. Like, those two things are probably something that you could talk about like a lot more openly.
If we get through like another 5 movies and there aren't any abortions, I'm going to be disappointed, because this has set a precedent now.
Well, we're going to be keeping a tally. That's going to happen.
Wait, so okay, so 2 of the movies you guys saw had boobs in them, and 2 had abortions.
Yep.
Has it just been 2 movies with boobs? Yeah, because Valley Girl didn't have anything. That was too tasteful.
No. And Rumblefish had bra and panties, but no boobs.
Well, Fast Times, that has a lot of boobs. It's like
yes,
2 different women's boobs too. It's not just one scene.
No. And it's like you said, Dave. It's actually done pretty tastefully in this movie where they're kind of it was actually kind of sweet, that moment where they're kind of like swimming together and like she feels kind of. But I just thought it was really because she's got her under things on, as Henry calls when she gets into the water with him, and then she kind of like feels comfortable enough that she's okay to go like completely nude. And I just thought that was kind of a nice like symbolic moment of them finally like reaching like the same level of intimacy. And I thought that was it was pretty tasteful. I mean, it was hot. Okay, like I don't want to like make it seem like it wasn't like really hot, because it was, but it was tasteful.
Yeah, the way that they were shivering with the water and just like gently touching each other, like it was nice, tastefully done, as you said.
It's young love, like
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, that lake was actually freezing because they filmed this movie in the winter, so they weren't totally acting.
Sure.
I mean, I can imagine. I mean, lake would probably be cold in the summer as well, so it's probably below zero then.
Well, getting back to abortion, I thought, well, I'm always terrified by like movies. It really gets me when like movies, especially period pieces, talk about like back alley abortions. I think the most disturbing one is Revolutionary Road, but this just had like I just thought they did a really good job of communicating how traumatic of an experience it was for like everybody involved, and they did a pretty good job of like making you feel like a little sort of sympathetic for Nikki, but at the same time like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, really hating him.
Like not being supportive enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I understand this is difficult for you, but it's also difficult for the person actually getting the abortion too. They really sort of captured the unpleasantness of that. Mm-hmm. I actually felt like that was I think they handled the abortion, even though this takes place a good 40 years before Fast Times. I feel like they actually handled the abortion
more realistically,
better. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree that it wasn't just like a weird side plot thing. Like, it was really like substantial. And speaking of weird side plot things, okay, the pool hall scene, it took forever.
Thank you. Oh, that movie, that scene could have been cut by like 5 minutes.
I really liked that scene. I thought they developed the tension pretty well.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Too long developing the tension.
Well, I think they I guess it was kind of neat the way that because I figured that it was going to be like a hustle kind of like thing that they attempted to do, but I thought it was really neat that they show rather than tell that that's what they're trying to do, because they just talk about it like a couple of scenes earlier where it's like, hey, remember when we needed like the money for that car part, and he's like, we almost got killed but we didn't, and then like later on they show that that's like what's happening. I thought it was kind of cool. I mean, maybe it did go on a little bit too long, but at the same time you are kind of like
you're invested in it. Like,
yeah, you are kind of like
it's pretty close. It's down to the wire. Are they going to make it?
My favorite shot, I don't know, it was my favorite shot in the entire movie is when they go to the roller skate, they go roller skating, and before Caddy and her friend and the guy show up, you just see him, like, he has both arms up on the railing and he has a cigarette in his mouth and flowers in his hand, just looking at everyone roller skate. And then, I don't know, it just was like such a perfect shot for how he does not want to be there, but he will suck it up to be next to that girl.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, good for you, man. Just don't bust your ass. And then he ends up doing it.
Young love.
Totally. It was nice.
Makes you do the wacky.
And it was kind of like, well, it was kind of cool too, because it's like, like she did kind of like get him to agree to show up and be Gretchen's date at that thing under false pretenses. So it was kind of like it was kind of neat that she was like kind of sympathetic and like friendlier to him than she could have been, given that she went to the dance with, or to the like roller rink with another guy.
And it showed how noble he was. Like, he still fulfilled his commitment, even though he didn't really want to.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. I have to say, I went on record when we did Fast Times by saying that this may be the only time, except for Milk, that Sean Penn played a likable character. But I'm going to revise that and say this time and Fast Times and Milk.
Yeah, he's a great character in this movie.
And and that's a good segue, I think, to talk about, of course, the main focus of our podcast, Nicolas Cage and his character and performance.
Mm-hmm. This is the second movie we've done where he's kind of an antagonist.
I think it might be too much to say he's an antagonist.
I think he's just very rough around the edges and doesn't know how to react to adult situations. But, when you have someone who's noble like Hopper was, Nicky just comes off as extremely immature. For some reason, I just could not deal with the fact that he showed his chest hair in every single scene he was in. Like
shows a lot.
Like he was either shirtless trying to get a tattoo or always wearing a wife beater down to like his nipples, it seemed. I mean, the guy, I just thought that was funny. But and you saw some of his what eventually would become his like Nick Cage shtick when he was drunk and singing.
Yes,
was
and
it the
doing
Tangerine
those hip thrusts?
Yeah, or when he was drunk on the train tracks, just kind of carrying on.
Yeah,
like you saw what could eventually be the Nick Cage we now know and love.
It's interesting that like past Nick Cage's drunken acting is present Nick Cage's just like normal acting.
Status quo.
Yeah. I think he had a really good character arc that wasn't necessarily spelled out for you, but I think that made it, even better because he says in an early scene, like, I can't wait. Like, there's nothing tying me to this town. When we get back from the war, I'm out of here. I'm not coming back. And I thought that kind of like foreshadowed the fact that he had been, kind of established the fact that he thought of Sally as just sort of like a temporary diversion and that he didn't care about her that much. And also that he was kind of, like taking advantage of Hopper's friendship a little bit. But then, by the time the movie is over, he's reconciled with Sally and actually have like genuine emotional moments, of honesty with her. And then he's also kind of come to realize that he needs Hopper and Hopper needs him. And that, there is something worth coming back to his hometown for after the war.
Yeah, Hopper helps him become a more responsible person in general.
And then, of course, they build up the whole thing about, they just kind of let you know, like, he doesn't have a great home life going on. And you sort of slowly revealed that, Henry's his surrogate brother and his dad is his surrogate father. And it's nice. I think it's a pretty good arc, especially since Nicky kind of dropped out of like the middle of the movie. Like he was in it a lot at the beginning and a lot at the end, and then kind of not really a whole lot in the middle when they're focusing on like the romance between like Hopper and Caddy. And I wondered if maybe we were in for another Rumblefish kind of thing where like we weren't going to see
10 whole minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
Fortunately, he comes back.
Yeah, and I do think, and I think, chest hair and all, Nick Cage looks great. He really looks the part of kind of like a 40s, like proto greaser kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
and he turns in a really good performance. This might be his best performance of the movies we've seen so far.
Oh, most definitely. The one scene where Caddy comes to the diner and Hopper like jumps behind the counter to give her the pie and then runs out after her to chase her on the bus, and then Nick Cage follows him right after that and yells something at him. I could not understand what he was saying. I had to rewatch that scene like 5 times and then look up the script online to see that actual line of dialogue.
Hey, Hopper, what the hell are you doing? The man's out of his mind.
What was the line that he ended up saying?
Was, what was it? This man's out of his mind, I think it was.
No, I remember that.
But like, I don't know, it seemed like he was just yelling gibberish to me.
Yeah,
or
I couldn't understand it. It was just garbled.
Another random thing. When he gives the girl the pie, Caddy, like, I know she's waiting for a bus, but she doesn't, like, while she's waiting, she doesn't once even look to her purse to take out money for it. Like, so not only does she take a whole pie, it doesn't look like she was planning on paying for it, or maybe she was just waiting a bit and then the bus was too late. I don't know. That was funny for me. Like,
Well,
I just saw
I saw way too money on the counter though.
Oh, see, probably because I see way too many things that I'm like, this has absolutely no bearing in the plot of the movie, but like, who cares about how much a movie cost back then? But yeah, Dave does.
Yeah, it's the little things that are interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bonnie, did you like those shoes, the blue shoes that she was trying on?
No, they're super weird.
I thought they were so ugly.
They were idiots.
Goodness.
Was that like
maybe that's what 40s girls were into?
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I was gonna say.
They didn't cover up all the way to the top. It was like the half part of her top of her foot, and then it looked really fat.
And they were like fabric. I don't know. It didn't.
They were fabric?
I mean, yeah.
It looked like it.
They looked kind of like satin or something, right? Or
it looked like duct tape for the straps almost.
I don't know that I would pay $25 for a pair of shoes like that today.
Much less then.
Yeah.
When that was like $50.
But it looked like, and too, it looked like there was just like a really narrow, like, opening, like, to show the skin, like, right in the center of the foot too. So I don't know. I mean, presumably those would only be worn with socks, but that doesn't necessarily increase their appeal.
No,
not at all.
Well, I'm glad we all are at a consensus on those shoes being
the shoes.
Some basic shoes.
Yes.
The one sticking point I had with the film was that the whole conflict that comes up is that Hopper thinks Caddy is rich when she's really not, and that, well, it's what drives a wedge in their relationship temporarily, and I feel like that falls back on the old romantic comedy cliche of there's some dark secret in one of the characters' past, and it would all be solved if they would just talk about it.
Well, it explained enough for me anyways, like her reasons for not telling him when she has that conversation with Gretchen, where she's like, hey, you know, like, he's leaving soon anyways, and you'll probably never see him again. You know, if he thought you were rich, so what? You know, like, that's like, why not just let him keep on thinking that, since this is just going to be a short-term relationship. And then she makes the decision to tell him, and then she doesn't get the opportunity to. And I don't know, I feel like it played into, I thought it was pretty logical the way it kind of played out.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't seem like they were like that. You said, like, it wasn't their main focus. I think honestly, he just, like, even if she was rich, I honestly think he didn't even care. Like, he truly just cared about her. So I just thought that was, like, the fact that she's rich or not. I like that, you know, it was a question he had, but it wasn't like the end all be all of their courtship.
Yeah, because he didn't break. If this were like a romantic comedy now, they would have it would have constantly been like a bunch of like misunderstandings where he thought she was rich, like, right from the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
And it would have been like a lot of like dumb situations where she would probably hire like I don't know, like, she would like hire someone to pretend to be like her butler or something, and that would be like a whole thing.
And pie in the face
to be her maid.
Someone has to get pie in the face.
Oh,
yeah, pie in the face.
I mean, I'm surprised no one got pie in the face in this movie.
All the normal tropes.
Like, he already gave her a free pie, so she didn't take it in the face. Like, come on.
I actually kind of was waiting for something to happen with that pie. I was like, he wouldn't just hand a full pie to her and then her like carry it on a bus ride without something going wrong with it.
Or I was waiting for the guy who was working there to come out, and then him and Nick Cage to run out, and then they end up running after the bus or something. Like,
you took my pie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was waiting
No
for.
repercussions
'cause
at
it's-
all.
Yeah, he gets away with just, stealing from the place. And then he plays it off very nicely where she asked him again, "Oh, aren't you working tonight?" And he said, "Oh, no, I was just helping out one night." Like, I probably would have came up with, "Oh, I quit." And then, like, I don't know, it probably would have been a thing. But he was quick on his feet.
Yeah, I would have gotten trapped in my own web of lies very quickly, I think. But thankfully, Sean Penn is quick. Henry Hopper Nash. And I thought it was cute that she sometimes called him by his last name, too. I thought that was nice.
Thank God Caddy had a rich white friend to bail her out and give her the money.
Well, I would have probably just, like, gone to her first and asked for the money, but I do think that they did a really good job of kind of establishing that there's, like, a culture of not asking for handouts, because it is kind of like a working class, like small town type thing, and obviously, like, the tension between Gatsby's and, not Gatsby's, was, like, not really something that was, like, a major focus. It was more just that particular Gatsby was that was played by Crispin Glover was a dick, but they're not all that way. And I think too that even just like the kind of brief moment that what's the name of the rich girl? Alice, was it?
Alice?
I feel like it was.
I think so.
Like, even that brief moment was really nice, where she was like, it must be so nice to have everything, like taken care of and not have any problems. And you can, and she's like, it's really not. Almost as if to say, like, the script is basically saying, like, yeah, but I'm still a woman, though, and it is the 40s. So there's that.
Yeah, for that small part, she did a good job and was also a good friend to Caddy. Nice support.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too, is that I like, is that you do kind of get a sense of, like Muir Hill or Muir County or wherever it is in California, like it being sort of like a small town community where, like, people know people, and, like, even just that one random scene where the old guy, like, smacks like Henry in the ass with his cane, and he's like God damn it, I'm gonna take that away from you, and the guy's just like It's like, yeah, they all kind of know like, everybody knows everybody, but not in, like, that cloying, saccharine, like, Andy Griffith kind of way. It's just kind of like, like, people are just friendly with people unless they have, like, a reason not to be.
Any final thoughts that we have?
Not for me.
I do recommend this movie if it doesn't become like a perennial classic that you watch all the time. It's at least a nice kind of slice of life thing, and it kind of tackles the idea of like knowing that you're about to go potentially die in a war, and like what would you do with like your last weeks before that happens, which is something that unfortunately is probably never not going to be relevant.
Why do we think that this movie, I think, Bonnie, you had mentioned that you liked it, but nothing from it stuck with you. Why don't you think it's that memorable?
I don't know. And it might actually be that it is kind of a slice of life story, as Nate was saying. Like, it's not, ended up being a period piece. Like, it just feels like it's such a complete story, and like when it's over, it's done. It doesn't keep me dwelling on it, I guess.
Just like it fulfills its purpose.
Yeah, it's fulfilled its purpose. It was completely enjoyable. Yeah. Like, it was good, but it's not, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think to speak to that, I think part of I think that's almost a sign that everyone who made the movie like did their job, is because it's supposed to feel like you're experiencing this, very, very transitory period in the lives of these young people in a very specific moment in history. And, they all do a good job of being real people going through real stuff. And there's not like really high stakes going on except on a personal level. So like once it's done, you're not like, wow, what a like memorable, iconic thing. This was just like somebody else's experience, and now it's over, and so that's it.
This feels like it...
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Bonnie.
No, I was just agreeing.
This feels like it could have been a young adult novel from the 70s or something. Like someone wrote a book about a day in the life, or a couple weeks in the life of these characters, and then someone made a movie.
I actually did think when I was watching the credits at the beginning, and it just said screenplay by Stephen Kloves. I was like, oh, I really just kind of, from the vibe of this, I just really kind of felt like this was going to say based on the novel by, whoever.
It did feel very novellic.
And that is like what Stephen Kloves has done a lot of too, is adapting like other people's work to movies. So it's interesting.
Would anyone want a sequel to this movie about the two of the characters coming back home?
No.
I actually don't want to know whether they lived or not. I'm going to assume that they did. I'm going to hope that they did. But, I don't really think we should know what happened to them. And I don't think we need to.
Yeah.
Completely agree. Like, it doesn't need a sequel. It was perfect on its own.
They did such a good job of showing how, like, their internal struggle with going off. Like, I think it would be really hard to watch them coming back from it.
It'd definitely be a different vibe of a movie.
It would be way darker.
I guess that's the kind of perfect way to end. It's ambiguous, but at the same time, you have that hopeful, positive feeling as they go off into the sunset, figuratively.
Exactly.
Well, it's like even though they're going off to endure what will almost certainly be like the biggest challenge of their lives, even though they're only 17 and 18, like even though all that, you kind of get like a sense of like completion and like optimism, because they've like sort of resolved a lot of the like
personal
the
problems,
of personal lives, and they're going into the war like as whole as they can be as people. And hopefully they won't lose too many pieces, both figurative and literal, as the war continues. But like, I think that's all we really needed to see.
Yeah, you don't need a sequel of Nikki dealing with PTSD or anything.
Yeah, because we do have a Nicolas Cage movie that is him dealing with PTSD. So
we like to close out our movie reviews with a little segment we call
Movie Review Haikus.
Movie Review Haiku is the most elegant way to review a film. It's based on Japanese poetry. It has a 3-line structure. The first line is 5 syllables, the second is 7 syllables, and the third is 5 syllables. And this is our fun little way to wrap up the film and give our thoughts on it. So who would like to go first?
Let me ask you this. How many haikus?
I only have one this week, Nate.
Okay.
And you can go first.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go first. Sweet love story. Hop and Caddy. Great chemistry. What? More abortions?
Oh, boy.
I also only wrote one, but my second one definitely would have involved abortions. I guess I'll go.
Yeah,
I started talking. Sorry. Mine is, this movie is cute, totally forgettable. What's it called again?
Okay, I wrote 2.
Ooh, overachiever.
Yeah. Well, okay.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Go ahead and do your first one, and then I'll do mine, and then you can close this out.
Sounds perfect. All right. So my first one is Racing with the Moon. Sean Penn smokes all the damn time. Nick Cage is funny.
Nice.
All right. I took the high road and decided to avoid the obvious abortion reference that came to me. Mine is World War II is here. Time for Gravedigger Daddy to drop some knowledge.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's really
very
good.
Poignant.
Okay. All right. It's hard to follow that up, but okay. My second one is you will see chest hair and a really long pool scene and Nikki's gap teeth.
Yes,
I think
will.
yours is the most poignant, David.
Hits me right in the feels.
Also, the most relevant on this Nicolas Cage podcast.
Yes.
So thanks for listening, everybody. If you'd like to connect with us on social media, you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/thewhedonfan and the number 1, on Twitter at @thewhedonfan, and on Facebook, just search The Whedon Fan. Would anyone else like to plug anything?
I
Go
don't
ahead
have
and plug
Twitter.
yourself, Dave. Go on.
I don't have Twitter, so sorry.
Oh.
And don't friend request me on Facebook, please don't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's we hit that last time with Leon, but I'm just going to reiterate again, like the official Enter the Cage Facebook, but
I'll get to that.
We'll talk to you there.
You may not send any of us friend requests on Facebook.
Thank you.
I won't even ignore them for a long period of time without doing anything like I do when older relatives send me Facebook friend requests. But you can find me on Tumblr at thenatezone.tumblr.com. I am on Twitter at Nate Treese, Treese, and that's it.
I am on Tumblr, thebonstergirl.tumblr.com.
And I know what that means now. Yay!
Oh, wait. I'm on Imager.
No, you can't take it back.
No, my username is say hi to your mother for me. So if you want to, if you ever want to go to Imager and upvote any of my comments or my pictures, you are more than welcome to.
Give him more of those internet points.
Beautiful.
Next time we'll be reviewing 1984's The Cotton Club. And as always, we want to hear from you guys. If you'd like to submit your own movie haiku, or just tell us how much you love us or hate us, leave us a comment. Our podcast is now available on SoundCloud. It should also be on iTunes by the time this goes up. You can also search for us on Facebook, just Enter the Cage. Also on Twitter at Enter the Cage Pod, and our official Tumblr, enterthecage.tumblr.com. It's time to put the bunny back in the box, but we'll see you next time on Enter the Cage. Enter the Cage is a Curious Manatee production. Executive producer Tyler Flynn, technical consultant Dave Rodriguez, logo design by Jen Ng, and theme song by Johnny D. Rod.